Hi and welcome to Swedish Plantguys. A while ago we made a video called All You Need to Know About Dracaenas or Dragon Plants, which is a video that's quite generalizing on how you take care of these type of plants. And we've gotten a lot of questions concerning the Dracaena varieties. So we thought we'd make a couple of videos where we go into a specific sort of Dracaenas. Now, if you haven't watched the All You Need to Know video, please do that, and then you can go back here and watch the Dracaena Massangeana, which we are going to talk about today, the corn plant, and you will get even more information on that specific type. Now, we've had a lot of subscribers recently, which is very, very nice. So if you haven't subscribed yet, please don't hesitate to subscribe and hit that bell as well so that you will get a notification every time we put out something new. Like we're going to put out some Dracaenas videos within a short period of time. We're starting with one of the most popular ones called the Dracaena Massangeana. I know that in America they call it corn plant, so it's easier to pronounce, so I'll just call it corn plant from now on. And I have them here around me now. In Sweden, these were very, very popular in the 80s and the beginning of the 90s. Then it just disappeared. It wasn't that popular anymore. But I know that in America it is still a very, very popular plant, and it's coming back here in Sweden as well. I'll get into why I think it's coming back again in a little bit. But this is one of the original Dracaena types, one of the first Dracaenas that were brought inside of our homes to help us get a better environment inside our homes. And I thought that we should start by looking at this plant I have right here, because this is what we call a mother plant. As you can see, it has a very, very thick base and it has a lot of different stems. Now, this mother plant, because most types of Dracaenas are grown down in South America on large fields outside, and it's these mother plants that generates the stems that later been used to produce this. Because this is the mass-produced version of the Dracaena Massangeana, or the corn plant. And as you can see, it has 3 stems that have been planted very close together. Now these stems, they come from these mother plants. So these grow out in the gardens, and when the stems have become large enough, they cut them, they put them on a container without any leaves, without any foliage, and they sent it on a container, for example, in this case, to Europe, to the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, where the grower replants the stem. And it takes about 10 to 12 weeks to get the leaves to be like you see them now. And when that is done, then they can sell it to you or to me. And there is a reason why I think this plant is very popular. And a couple of the reasons is the foliage itself, the thick stems, and also how easy it is to take care of this plant. So I thought we'd start by looking at the container at the bottom, because this is one of the reasons this is a very, very easy to care for plant, because it has a root system that usually is quite extensive. It grows all around the pot and quite quickly as well. This means that you have a complex root system that is willing and able to supply the rest of the plant with water, nutrition, and all it needs. If you have a plant that has a very slow growing root system, usually that plant is quite hard to take care of, because if you do something to harm the roots, it will die. But this is a very, very strong. We'll see what happens when I knock off this pot. And this is exactly what I want you to do when you buy a Dracaena. Always knock off the pot and look at the roots. And as you can see, it covers nothing happens when you knock off the pot. It has roots all around, and it should look like this when you buy it. If it doesn't, if it starts to fall apart, then please pick another plant instead. Now, another reason why this is such a popular plant is because of these thick, healthy, really nice stems as well. And if you have a stem like this that is this thick, it tells you something. It tells you that this is a quite cheap plant. It only costs maybe, this plant maybe costs, but this mass-produced Dracaena like this maybe costs like $20 to $30 to buy, which is quite cheap for this big of a plant. And one of the reasons is that it grows fairly fast, which means that it doesn't have to stand and be this big for a long time in the gardens or in the plant greenhouses. Thank you. And when you have this thick stem on a plant that is fairly cheap, you know something. And what you know is that this plant is very, very good at transporting water and nutrition within the stems. Because what happens when you have a rapid transport system inside of the plant is that it needs more and more roads inside, more and more highways to transport all this nutrition and water. And this makes the stem thicker and thicker and thicker. So you know that this plant is very good at doing that, transporting everything inside of it. Which creates this very, very nice thick stem. Now, not all Dracaenas has this type of a stem. You have two different types of species of Dracaena. And this is one of them where you get the really thick bark that is brown, grayish in shape or color. But you also have, and this is a Dracaena Janet Lind, it's called. You have the green stems on this type of Dracaena. Now these are both Dracaenas, but they are quite different when you look at the stems. And this plant doesn't have that extensive root system that the Massangeana has, which means that this Dracaena will not be as easy to take care of as this one. Because if you hurt the roots in this one, it will damage the plant quite quickly. Another thing to look at is, of course, the big, lush, perfectly beautiful leaves on the Massangeana. And you have these, it's a variegated form. That means it's not all the way green. It has this lime green colors in it, stripes in it. And it also has this very, very wide leaf. Now, the thing to know about the corn plant is that over time, this plant will get really big. And in every size and every way, because every leaf like this is going to continue to grow. It's going to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's not the case in every type of Dracaena. We had the Janet Lind here as well. The leaves doesn't get much bigger than this. It stops. Even if it gets older, it stops in this size. Of course, it's going to grow up and grow new leaves, but it's not going to get bigger. But the corn plant continues to grow almost its entire life. It just gets longer and longer and bigger and wider if you take care of it in the right way. What you have to so you have to consider this is going to be a very huge plant. So if you live in a small apartment or somewhere where you don't have the space, then maybe you should look at another Dracaena than the corn plant. But if you have the space, this is a beautiful plant to have. Now this variegated color on the leaves, however, will not be there during the lifetime of this plant. Because usually Dracaenas are bought because they're very good at being placed in darker areas in your house. Usually you place it a couple of meters inside of the room, away from the windows. because it's there you want the plant. Now, it can take that. It will be okay in that position. However, the corn plant will lose this variegated color when you put it inside of the room, a bit into the room. If you want to keep this color, you have to put it in a very light spot. No Dracaenas love the direct sunlight, so never in direct sunlight, but if you put it in a place where it's very, very light without the direct sunlight, it will keep on having this variegated color. So that's also one thing you have to consider buying this plant. Now, taking care of this plant is quite easy. Like almost every Dracaena, it's quite easy. And what we tell you in the All You Need to Know About Dracaenas video is that how to water this plant is quite easy. It wants to dry out in between watering. So use your finger or do something, some type of system that you can see. Easiest way is just to use the finger and feel the soil. When it's completely dry, then it's time to water. But never ever keep water inside. If you put this inside of it's very heavy. If you put this inside of a container that doesn't have any holes in the bottom, which you don't want inside, of course, never have any water standing in that container, because then the roots are going to get damaged and you will have a problem with the plant. You will very, very quickly get green tips on the leaves, which will rapidly be bigger and bigger. It will continue to be bigger and bigger, so that almost like 10 centimeters of the edge of the leaf is going to be brown and quite soft. That is usually a sign that something is wrong with the root system, and usually it's because you've watered too much and you've let the water stand down in the container. What happens to the plant is that it doesn't get any air. The water just pushes out all the air and it can't breathe. So it dies, but it takes a while before it totally collapses. But also, if you compare this to other varieties of Dracaenas, this plant will drink a little bit more than most of the other Dracaenas. And that is just because what we talked about a little while ago, because of the very thick stems that transport a lot of water and a lot of nutrition, it's going to need more water and a little bit more nutrition as well. Now, going over to how you give the nutrients. To all Dracaenas, I recommend you to mix the nutrients with the water you water with. So mix it up in the water and give it to the plants. Now, when do you do that? Well, you do that during springtime and summertime, when the plant is active, when it's growing. Then you give nutrition. And maybe once a month, maybe every 2 weeks. It depends on how often you water the plant. But, always follow the advice on the bottle of the nutrients that you buy. Never ever give a little bit more, because it's easy to think that nutrients are like candy to us. Oh, I'll just take a little bit more and I'll feel even better. I need a little bit more. And that's how you can think about the plant as well. I'll just give it a little bit extra and it will go even more. No, it doesn't. And I'll tell you why. The nutrients that we mix with the water is actually in a salt. It's salt, basically. Which means that when you pour it on the soil is going to absorb the water, and it's going to, the clay in the soil and other particles in the soil have something that we call cation exchange capacity. It means that it has the ability to absorb or lock on particles with electricity. And salt has an electric, it's electric in a sense. It has a plus and a minus. So it's going to lock onto like the clay particles in the soil. But it's still salt. And if you add more salt to the water, well, you know what happens. If we drink salt water, we die. It's the same thing with plants. If you add too much nutrients to the water, it will become essentially salt water and the plant won't be able to drink it. So always give exactly the amount that is recommended on the bottle of the nutrients. And this type of Dracaena, it's especially sensitive to these salty conditions. But what do you do if you see something? You can see that you've given too much salt when the soil on top begins to look a little bit white. You can see a whitish tone. That is what we in Sweden call saltavlagring. I think in English it's called salt precipitation. And you can see it because the soil gets a little bit white. And when you see this, it's a big warning sign. And what you do is, if you still have it in this type of a container where there is a hole in the bottom, you can just take it outside, rinse water through the soil and let it pour out. And you will gradually be pouring out all of the salts. So you're kicking off the system, rebooting the system again. And then you can put it inside and start to water it normally again and then add nutrition. So you're taking away all the excess salt in this. So be aware of that and always follow the recommended on the label on the nutrients. Now this plant is very, very strong. It grows rigorously and almost all year, which also often means that it's not prone to get a lot of pests. It doesn't happen very often that you get pests on this. And if you get some type of pest, you can usually just buy something in your local store to remove it. You will notice that the newest leaves on top, those are the ones that are going to be attacked first. So you see that these plants will they will lose their color and get quite light in color. When that happens, you know that, oh, something is wrong with the plant, because the newest leaves are the ones that are supposed to be the most healthiest. So if you see that something is wrong on the top, usually you have pests on the plant. Buy something and try to take care of it. You can do it without any without buying something. You can take this plant outside and you can rinse it off with a strong water. You have to rinse it every day for 2 weeks so that the eggs that have hatched will also be rinsed off. So for 2 weeks, just put the hose on full power so that it really gets into everywhere on the leaves. It just knocks them off the leaves. But it won't knock off the small eggs because they are attached to the leaves. So that's why you have to do it again and again and again so that all the eggs have hatched and you can get rid of them. And you don't have to worry outside that the pests will go anywhere else because they can't go anywhere else. They will just die on the ground. So you don't have to worry that you will spread this anywhere else. So just go outside and put the hose on max and rinse it off. Now this will grow, as I said earlier, this will grow and become very big. Now how do you handle that? Well, it's quite easy. Every Dracaena is very easy to prune. You can cut it almost all year around, but I recommend you to do it springtime or in the summer when it's active. But you can do it even in winter time as well. And what you do is that you just take a sharp shear like this, or a scissor or something, and you can cut it anywhere on the stem. Now, not on the stem that is brown, not the stem that has been rigid. You can cut it all the way down here and it will produce new buds. However, it takes a lot of strength out of the plant to do that. It's easier for the plant if you cut it somewhere where the stem hasn't been brown yet. It hasn't been stiff and hard yet. It's still a little bit soft. If you cut it, you can cut it anywhere on the stem. Just cut it right off. and it will produce new buds and start to grow again. Now, I have understood with a lot of questions from the viewers out there that you have this plant at home, and maybe you've had it all the way since the 80s. So you have a big one that maybe just have 1 or 2 long stems. Don't be afraid to cut it. You can cut it all the way down, as far down as you want, but cut one at a time. And when you see that it starts to grow out new buds, then you can take the next one. When that seed starts to grow new buds, you take the next one. If it takes a very long time for the buds to produce, then you wait a little bit longer before you cut the next one. So you can prune it down and you don't have to worry. Now I have to add something here, because this is important. Usually, a lot of people think that, okay, I will go in and cut this, and I'll add some nutrition as well to give it some more power to grow. That's the usual way. However, we have a rule that you only give nutrition when the plant is feeling good. As I said before, if you have a plant that is not feeling that good, it's sagging a little bit, you have a little bit of brown leaves, you can see it maybe has had some pests on it, you know that it's not good, it's not growing. If you add nutrition to that, or nutrients to that, you're adding this salt we talked about before, and you're just making it worse. So we only add nutrients when we know the plant is feeling good, when it's growing and feeling good. Then we add nutrients to make it even better. But when it's dormant, or if you see that it's not feeling that good, never ever add nutrients. Well, that is all we had about the Dracaena Massangeana. It's a very easy plant. To summarize a little bit, it's very easy to take care of it. It will grow very fast, and it will get really big. So if you don't have the room for it, maybe go for another type of Dracaena. And if you want to keep this very nice coloring, put it in a very light spot. Otherwise, it's going to be all green. And always water when the soil is dry, never when it's wet. And add nutrients during spring and during summer, not in winter or fall. That's all for today. Please go in and watch the All You Need to Know About Dracaenas. We'll put a link to that, so you can just click away. And we will be making more videos like this on other types of Dracaenas. So you can go, if you've bought that specific type, you can go in and watch that one and know how to make it thrive. That's all for today. Until next time, hej då!